Okay, hi everyone. So I kind of just wanted to give a couple of reflections and thoughts on your reflections and thoughts. This is not really like a reading, like a response to the discussion prompt in the same way as I kind of did last time. This is more, I just took some notes about some of the things that I saw come up several times, and I had a couple of reactions and questions to them. So I want to start with a couple of caveats. Though one is um I know I already okay. Well, so one is that I took some notes and I'm going to be talking like as though I was talking to you in person. Um, so I might stumble over my words and stuff like that. I'm not going to edit this. I'm going to try to keep it short, as short as I can. It's just stuff that, like, if I was in a classroom and somebody made a certain comment, I might respond with, but what if you looked at it this way, kind of thing. And that's what I want to do here. Even though it's asynchronous and it's not the same thing. I'm going to be thinking like talking off the top of my head, so it's going to seem discombobulated, perhaps. Um, I can't remember what the second caveat was. So uh, if it comes to me, I'll tell you. But basically, just bear with me. Don't I don't know. Don't judge. I'm just thinking on the fly based on a couple of notes I have here. So um I guess I just also want to point out maybe that this is just for the sake of thought. The purpose of this class essentially, not based on my goals, but based on the goals of intellectual heritage. Part of the idea, like I said before, is to try and look at things and look at issues from several different perspectives. So when I am challenging you, I'm not trying to say that you're wrong or anything like that. I'm just trying to challenge you to look at something from a different perspective. And you should be able to feel free to do that with me too. I'm not necessarily always right. Of course, I think I'm right, but I've been wrong before. So I just want to point out that the purpose of this video that I'm making right now is not to correct. Well, a couple of things I do want to correct, but for the most part, it's just I would like to present another point of view or something, another question to think about. And the reason I'm spending so much time talking about that is just because I want to be very clear, and I'm not trying to present a version of the truth or a version of reality as absolute and unquestionable or anything like that. So the first thing I have in my notes is about this idea of I think a lot of several of you mentioned in your responses that there is a problem with um, people being given things without working for it. And I addressed, some of that in my comments in the discussion board. Just a couple of, what about this and what about this? Like, what about people who do get stuff, and they're just born into a wealthy family, stuff like that. But the ultimate on a more meta kind of level, you know, um, you're making there's an assumption there. We are making an assumption also. Like, why is it bad for people to be given things? What's wrong with that? Um, and then that could be a whole nother discussion. Like, well, maybe some things people should be given. Maybe some things people shouldn't be given. But like, just the question, I just encourage you to ask yourself the question, like why not? We all understand like the logic, I think, behind the idea of like working hard to achieve something. There's the argument that there will be, I guess, there will be a distance, like what will happen to the incentive to work if there's no reward, I guess. Um, then again, I point you to all of the professions that where people work very hard, and they don't do it for the money. Um, but there's also, I guess, the notion, I think, and nobody mentions this explicitly, but I think another thing that's going on here is the idea that it's unfair for someone who has not worked for it, I guess, to get something, the same thing as somebody who has worked for it. And I understand that. That makes sense to me. But maybe for some things, it doesn't matter. Like I mean, maybe that's true for some things and not other things. Like so it's just another thing to think about. I would just like that question to be out there. Like, why can't people be given things? I mean, I don't know how many of you got the what was the uh $1,200 stimulus check. I don't know how many of you got that. Um, Everybody who made under a certain amount of money got that $1,200 check, and then stimulus check, and then the $600 one that came later. I don't know how many of you think that because you didn't work for it, you should give it back to the IRS or to the government. You know, I certainly think I certainly don't want to give my check back. Uh, and so that's like, what about that? That's kind of an example of just everybody. Nobody had to do anything to access that emergency money. So maybe a better question then is like, where do you draw the line? Where do you draw the line between things that should be provided to people and things that people should have to work for or pay for somehow? Because I think that's a distinction that could be made, that should be made, and it's something to think about. But I just I like to question the assumption that people shouldn't be given things. Like, why not? Um, let's see. The other thing, I'm just going to mention this briefly. The thing about private property in the Communist Manifesto, I think, is widely misunderstood. And maybe part of it, I have a little bit of trouble understanding exactly what Marx is talking about here too. But he is not talking about personal possessions here. He's not talking about like, I wouldn't have to give up all of my books, which I love, which I have paid for myself and I've bought myself. And there's that quote in the manifesto where he says, you're we're not talking about taking away the personal possessions of workers that workers have bought or obtained for themselves. He's not talking about personal possessions like that. He's talking about massive, accumulated private capital. And I don't know if he mentions land, but he might also be referring to land a bit, because if you watch the philosophy tube videos, he covers this history of like the common land until a certain whatever, I don't know, 16th century or whatever it was in England. People had nobody owned the land. Certain big parts of the country, of the land, was common. Anybody could use it. And then when people started staking claim to the land, then you have to kick the farmers off the land. Either this is my land now and I kick you off of it, or you charge people to use it. They have to pay a tax to use the land or something like that. That kind of idea of private property also, I think, maybe, but I don't think he talks about land specifically. But in any case, I think when he's talking about private property, you got to be careful about how you interpret that, because he's not talking about abolishing individual possessions and stuff like that. Um, there's nothing in the moving on to the next point now. There's nothing in the Communist Manifesto about everybody being paid the same. I've read this like 4 or 5 times now, at this point, and if you can find the place in the manifesto that suggests that he thinks everybody should be paid the same, please send it to me, because I would like. So far, as far as I know, this is a myth that has been sort of perpetuated, I guess, from the Cold War or something like that. But it's persistent. So if there's an actual place in the manifesto that prompted you to think that that's what Marx thought, please point it out to me so I can reread it, that specific part, and try and see where a misinterpretation might be happening. But that's a misnomer. I don't know if Marx wrote about that somewhere else and suggested that, but it's not in the manifesto. Do people only? Yeah, again, do just think about this question: do people only do things for money? Um, I don't think. I think most, maybe not most, but certainly a lot of people, they do jobs for many different reasons, not just for money. And I think now this is just pure intuition, but I think the vast majority of people work to get by and be comfortable. They don't work to be a billionaire necessarily. I mean, how much money do you need? So um, I guess the other question is, if you don't choose a job that pays well, does that mean that you should have to suffer? Um, or does it make more sense to pay people so that they are able to live comfortably? There's many jobs that don't pay well but are necessary. So I don't know. I mean, should I keep thinking of teachers, not university I mean, even as bad as it is for a lot of teachers, like adjuncts at the university level. I think in many places in the country, it's really, really, really bad for like public school teachers, and that is extremely important job and very necessary. And it's how can you, like, if you were like an alien coming to look at the society of the United States, with no context, and you look at how things work in the United States, and you saw how much a lot of teachers have to struggle, and then you saw people inventing, video games and getting filthy rich. Like, what conclusions would you draw about that society? You know, that is a perspective. You don't have to, definitely, you don't have to agree with it. It's just like, if you look at things structurally, yes, somebody who chose to be a teacher, or um, something like that, or something that doesn't pay great, and stuff like that, or maybe even it's not like so important. I know I can't think of an example off the top of my head now, so let me stop. Let me quit while I'm ahead. But just to look at things structurally, like, if someone chooses a job that they love, and it doesn't pay well, is that just like, you know too bad, or is that unfair? That's the question to think about. What else have I got in my notes? I guess, okay, so the last thing I have is, this is This is the first semester where this has come up, actually. And it's interesting because a big criticism when we talk about communism is to look at places, autocratic or authoritarian places like the USSR and stuff like that. And there are problems with doing that, but I'll leave that aside for now. Where I've never heard students come up with the idea that Marx thought there shouldn't be any government. And that's like the complete opposite of like the USSR, which is like was a dictatorship, you know. So it's interesting that those were both prominent uh, things that came up in your comments, and they're the complete opposite. So I'm wondering, any of you who mentioned Marx, the idea that Marx didn't want there to be a government or a strong government, I would love it if you could point to the part in the Communist Manifesto that made you think that, because that's something else that I'm not. Maybe you're right, and I missed it. Um, I missed something. You know, it's totally possible. But so far as I can tell, Marx saw a very very strong role for the government, and particularly in the economy, but also in society. You know, he's he's the one that introduces this idea of free public education, or is at least one of the early proponents of that. And we have that. That's a kind of a very socialist kind of idea to have free a free service, for everyone. And now, of course, we can go into all of the problems that we have with property taxes paying for it and inequality in the public school system and everything, which I think is really important. But just in just in the principle of the idea of like free public education for everyone, um, is something. I mean, that's a role for the government and society, according to Marx. And he also saw the government playing a very arguably, he sees the government as controlling everything about the economy, and that is one of the things that becomes a problem for people that try to put Marxism into practice, because it's just not feasible, I think. Uh, however, we also have that to an extent, because in the United States, because the Federal Reserve controls interest rates and tweaks things to make the market do certain things. And I don't know a whole lot about that, but um, there's always some government control of the economy, right? But Marx saw it as being very. In any case, going off on a tangent. I'm sorry. Uh, he does not see the abolishment of government. He sees government as being run by the people. He sees the abolishing. He wants to abolish the class system. He wants a classless society. Doesn't mean there's no government. It just means the people run the government, right? From the bottom up, grassroots style. How that would work in real life, I don't know. Maybe you can't have a huge country like the United States. Maybe it has to be all very localized or something. I'm not sure, but that's something to use your imagination to think about. And I'm gonna stop there because I know I've talked like way too much already. And I don't know. I hope it's interesting. Uh, but that's all I got. I just wanted to give those reflections on Marx, my reflections on your reflections, and also just that comment at the end there. Yeah, like I, I don't think I've brought this up in conversations before, but the idea of like using your imagination to envision something different, and use your imagination and let it go. Also, like try to not think realistically in some ways, because I think when you let your imagination go, you can be surprised at like what interesting sort of possible solutions and things that you come up with. I think it's really good exercise when you're trying to think about how to work towards the common good or improve society to use your imagination, to envision a better a better situation. um, how you get there might be like the big question mark, but can you envision what a a better society would look like? Okay, I'm going to stop there, and thank you all very very much for trying to get through the Communist Manifesto. And I will see you all around Canvas. Bye.